All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to day number 9 of my Monster a Day art challenge. And so I'm just showing up every day. Sometimes I'm recording, sometimes I'm live streaming. Today I'm live streaming, and yeah, just showing up, making a monster every day. It just kind of felt like October, felt like monster time. So um, I've been kind of just drawing monsters, and I got into painting. So I'm going to continue with painting, and I think I'm going to follow along, excuse me, with what I did the last couple of days, where I painted a background and then used ink on top of that. So I'll try to maybe I'll mix it up. Maybe I'll try a horizontal format today. I don't know. We'll try it. Excuse me. I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. But yeah, so really appreciate people tuning in, and let's go ahead and dive into making a monster. Let me go ahead and switch this around. Okay, so I've got my mixed media paper. I'm thinking that, hey, maybe I want to do more of a horizontal format, and I've got paint. This time I have Derwent Inktense paints. So they're not technically watercolor, they're water soluble ink. And there's 2 palettes of them, so there's 24 different colors. Nice range of colors with these. So I'm going to turn and use these today, but they work just like watercolor paint. But it has more colors than my other set of watercolor paints. So just like I've done before, I want to go ahead and paint the background. And I'm thinking of some kind of blues and greens today. It's kind of what I got on my mind. So I'm going to just grab a nice big brush and just going to go ahead and, like I said, I think I'm going to do a horizontal format. I haven't done that in a while. So I'm going to start off with this kind of turquoisey color, and then throw in, this is a kind of like a phthalo green, a nice bright green. So I find that the Inktense paints are not quite as intense as the core, and I'm not really sure why. They're just a different kind of paint. So the core has, it seems like the paint gets real dark real fast, and that's actually a bit of a problem for me. So I find that these don't quite get as dark and as bright as quickly. And so I'm going to kind of maybe build up the darkness, because this is a little bit on the light side. So, but anyway, let's go ahead and just using my finger to, like, where I see some white spots. But all right, so I think that's a good start. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and dry that. And while I'm drying it, if you are tuning in and you want to pop into the comments and say hi, I always appreciate seeing who's out there and seeing where you're from. Okay, so one of the things I could do, I was talking about how like this paint doesn't seem to be as bright or as intense, and that's partly because whenever you're working from the dry paint, so a lot of people will do something that is known as priming the paint. So what you do is you just take a little bit of water and you just kind of stick it in on top, and that what that does is it starts to soften the paint up a little bit, and the paint will be more intense. So, but anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and I want to add another layer. So I'm going to use some of this real bright yellowish green color. So really, we just want to have a bunch of blues and greens in this. So I'm picking up. I'm out of the frame, but I'm picking up some of a brighter blue, more of a phthalo blue. It's just scrubbing it in there, and then I'm gonna pick up some of that phthalo blue or phthalo green. Get that to blend together some. Okay, hit that with the dryer. All right. So while that's what I'm trying to do is just to get sort of an uneven kind of texture background that I can draw on top of. So I want to add a little bit more texture. So I'm going to do that in a couple of different ways. So the first way is one that I've done before, and that's splattering. So these nice stiff bristle brushes, it has to be stiff bristled. If you have a real soft watercolor brush, it might not splatter as much. But nice stiff bristles splatter really nicely. So that's a little bit of that green. We'll do a little bit of this blue. Okay. So I can let that totally dry, and then I'll have all those little splatters, or I can dry it with the hair dryer. But I'm gonna just let it sit for a couple moments, and then I'm gonna grab. I think yesterday, the day before, I may have used a brush to kind of drag over top to spread out some of the droplets. So a lot of those droplets are still wet, and there's still a lot of paint there. So I grabbed a little plastic scraper that I have, a little plastic spatula, and I can just drag. And the nice thing about doing it this way is that whenever the spatula hits some of those bigger spots, it'll drag it out. And if I want to, maybe do a couple more. And then again, just drag. Just something a little different to do with the little splattered spots there. I'll go ahead and hit it with the hairdryer. Paper is really getting kind of curled, so I want to go ahead and hit the back with the hair dryer and maybe flatten it out a little bit. Alright, so there's a last thing I want to do for texture, and it's one of my favorite things. And so if you've ever tuned in to any of my journaling things, whether it's a class or whether it's some of the live streams or videos I've done, I use this as a stencil all the time. It's one of my favorites. It's something that I've heard called punchinella, but it's basically sequin waste, and they sometimes sell it as a ribbon, but it's plastic, so it creates this really interesting kind of pattern, and you can kind of use it as a stencil. So what I'm doing, it's kind of hard to see. Let me move that up. So I didn't really get much water on my brush because a lot of water, it'll run underneath. And so I just kind of tap and paint. And even with just a little bit of water, it's still going to kind of run and maybe even puddle a little bit underneath the plastic. And I'm not going to hit it all. I'm not going to try to do it all. I just want to do bits and pieces. And then when I pick it up, you can see like these just little spots. And then some places, yeah, it kind of runs underneath and it's not very clear. But I like that with this. I mean, you could do this with any kind of stencil. But I'm a big, I really like sort of found stencils. You know, things that were not meant to be used as stencils, not meant to be used in art. You know, you could find and buy, you know, artist design stencils, but you know, this is just, you know, a generic pattern, and it's all because of sequins. And at one point you used to be able to find this all over the place, but now I find that it's hard. Like, it's hard to find in like arts and crafts stores, maybe more independent craft stores, but the big box stores, it's hard to find. But a lot of people, or there's several people that sell it like on eBay and on Etsy. And somebody gave me a whole bunch of it a long time ago, and I have different sizes of it. So, but it just ends up with all these like little spots that are kind of cool looking. So go ahead and hit that with the hairdryer. So, I want to draw my monster just like I've done before, and I'm going to grab my pen. And if you want to practice first and try drawing it on a separate paper, or you want to draw it with pencil first, by all means, I'm going to just dive in and use my pen. So I'm going to do a horizontal, and I'm still going to do one of the up close, what I call the monster selfies. And so I want him to be kind of a short, kind of squat like little monster, but maybe with some big eyes. Maybe he's going to have a big eye right here. And then maybe he's going to have a smaller eye. And then I think about the mouth. Like, where's his mouth going to be? And let's see, I did kind of square teeth. Let's go ahead and do thicken some like really big teeth, at least on the outside. Okay, he's kind of has like a Hershey Kiss kind of shape to him, kind of like that. All right, think about the horns. Okay. And these are his arms coming off. That got a little skinny there. That's the thing, you know. Oops, I drew that. That's a little skinny, so I'm gonna have to try to maybe fix that up a little bit whenever I put the thicker lines in. And I don't like the way that horn kind of curves there. You know, it's just that's the one of the risks of just using the pen. And I didn't practice this guy today. I just kind of decided, like, all right, let's go ahead and do the horizontal guy. I think I'm going to put the eyes a little bit more like he's cross-eyed. So I really like doing this, these kind of up-close monster selfies, because it helps to really kind of divide up the space in a little bit more interesting way than just having the whole monster there. But of course, then you don't get to see, you know, what kind of hands he has and what kind of feet he has and things like that. So there's kind of pros and cons to it. So I think like I'm going to do very similar to what I did yesterday and paint the background in now, and then I can do all the extra pen work. So the real question is, like, what color though do I want to paint it? I think I'll go with this turquoise. So I like using the water soluble materials like the watercolor paint or the Inktense paints, because they show the things underneath it. And so, oops, yeah, talking and just almost messed that up. So I accidentally went into the monster And but anyway, so yeah, so the paint allows that texture and the background to show through. And you could do something similar with acrylic, but a lot of acrylic paints are very opaque. And so, when you paint in the background, it's like you cover up a lot of things. And I just like this idea that the monster and the background are one and the same, but then just the background's been darkened a little bit and really helps the monster pop out. I've really come to like this technique, especially with the monsters. Just to start off with that painted background and then draw the monsters on top. Just kind of goes against the way that we've been taught about art and things. I think we have this coloring book mentality a lot of times with art, that I draw a picture and then I color it in or I paint it in. But with this idea, it's like, well, I paint first and then I draw and then I paint things in. And then that contrast with the black and the white ink is really interesting. Alright, I'm going to do something that I haven't done yet. I'm going to take some of this green and I'm going to paint his eyes in. Just to make his eyes a little bit different. So if I wanted to, I could give him spots and do the same thing. I don't know if I'm going to give him spots because I really like the fact that, the painting underneath has the spots already. Let's go ahead and dry him. Alright, so now's the time to work the magic of the black and white pen. I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way because I think I'm done with the paint. I might not be, but I'm pretty sure that I am. Give myself some more room. Yeah, so just very, very much like I've done almost on every other monster, is just use the the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens. So I know a lot of people like these pens. I know that some artists really like the Micron pens. Some people just like to use Sharpie. The thing with the Sharpie, though, the Sharpie is it's an aggressive solvent in it, and so over time it can really affect the paper. It's not the best to use for something that you really want to last a long time. And this is India ink in the Pitt pens that I like. So a nice rich black ink, very light fast, means it's not really gonna fade with light. There's no harsh chemicals in it. But I mean, that, when you're creating, you don't necessarily have to think about that stuff. So kind of using just whatever you have that works. I think that's the most important part. But if you are thinking about like, oh, I want to have stuff hanging on the wall, or I want to give this as a gift, and I want the person to be able to enjoy it for years and years and years, you do need to think about the materials. So the paints that I'm using, the Inktense, both the Inktense and the other the Golden Core paints that I've been using are both light fast and durable. So light fast just means that they don't fade in the light, or they don't fade much. So just like anything, there's a scale. Some colors and some paints are not light fast at all. And so, you hang it up, and then if some sunlight or if some of the light from the light bulbs in the house can actually fade it over time. And so that's something to be aware of if you're thinking about hanging work, or if you're selling work. You don't want to sell artwork or give artwork away and then, a year or two down the road it fades and it's not as nice as it was. I mean, there are things like, works on paper should be framed, usually matted and framed. And there's UV glass. So it's actually glass that will filter out the harmful UV rays. Just like the UV rays are bad for your skin, the UV rays are bad for the paints and the materials on the artwork. But I don't always think about that. I mean, I often use Prang watercolor paints, which are inexpensive. They're a great student grade. I used to use them all the time when I taught public school, and a lot of art teachers use them. And they worked really well. They were inexpensive, but they were bright. But they just weren't high quality. And so it wouldn't be something, I wouldn't do something out of the Prang and then be like, oh, I'm gonna sell this, or I'm gonna give this to somebody. But I've used those paints all the time in my journal, thinking like, well, it's my journal, it's private, I'm not selling it, I'm not giving it away. And then also in my journal, it's closed off, so it's not exposed to the elements. It's not exposed to light. Kind of feel like I want his lip to be like extra thick. Oops. As I was lifting it up, the paper is curled, so it kind of rocked. And I've got this little mark here that. Let's see if I can kind of minimize it, get rid of it. Well, I did say I wanted it thick. So that's the thing. It's like, oops, something happened. Now I have to kind of deal with it. There a little while ago I said I didn't really like this arm. It's still a little thin, but I was able to kind of thicken it up, so it's not as bad as I kind of felt like it was. All right, switch back to my smaller one. Yeah, I like how the green turned out, and I can't wait to see it next to the white gel pen. So just kind of start putting in those details. Just going to put some little dashes around the outside ring, around the eyes, just to give it a little bit of texture, but also a little bit of value. So I'm not going to color it in totally black, but just this little texture creates a little bit of value and just makes it a little different, makes it stand out a little bit more. So just remember, if you're creating your own monsters, I love seeing what people do. So if you don't mind, I'd share it in the comments if you want, or tag me if you post on social media. I know some folks are doing it with children. I'd love to see their work. Do some little stripes up here. I want to have a little bit of value. I want it to be a little bit darker back here. So I'm going to maybe just do some kind of vertical lines. These are just kind of hatching lines. So if you're shading with pen, you do hatching and cross-hatching lines. So hatching lines are parallel, and then cross-hatching are sets of hatching lines that crisscross. So just to add a little bit of value. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the white gel pen. So I love this gel pen, but like any gel pen, they if you don't use it a lot, they can kind of dry up, and then also they run out of ink very quickly because it's a thick gel. But if you don't use it uh, often, it can. I think what happens is a lot of times the tip clogs up because all that ink dries kind of inside. Oh, I just realized I did not do the details inside of this iris over here. Yeah, I haven't had this pen very long, and I can already see that the ink is already getting pretty low. That's another reason why I like this kind of scratching uh, kind of textured way of putting it in. I don't try to make it super solid looking. And you could do something like this with like acrylic paint. So I mentioned like using paint markers and paint pens, but you could just take plain white acrylic paint. It might pick up a little bit of the watercolor underneath, so the white might get tinted with, in this case, the blues and the greens. But, it's like you can always let it dry and then add on top of it. Yeah, I love how that white just makes it pop. And I think I want to have a little bit of the white on the horns. I don't want the horns to appear totally white. So just kind of being rough with the way I'm putting the pen in there. Trying to do those kind of hatching marks, but going in the direction of the horn. So they overlap a little bit. And as I get closer to the top of the horn, I'm trying to get them closer together. Yeah, I like how he's turning out. I think I'm gonna just put some small little circles, kind of like freckles, and then do a few dots. And I just think go back and touch up a little bit around the white. All right. Well, I think he's pretty done. So we'll sign him. All right. Well, there you go. So day number 9. Day number 9 all wrapped up. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, day number 9. I really, like I was saying, I really like this way of working, of putting in the painted background and then doing the drawing on top. Yeah, I think of the monsters that I've made, the 3 that I made the last 3 days are probably 3 of my favorite. And I like playing around with the color scheme. So, today was kind of blues and greens. Yesterday was blues and purples, and the day before that was pinks and purples. Yeah, just really kind of cool to build up that texture. So I'm going to check the comments real quick, see if anybody has any questions. All right. Yeah, no one has any questions, I see, but yeah, just really appreciate people tuning in and joining me, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully you've made some of your own monsters, and I'd love to see your monsters. So tag me or post them in the comments. If you do have any questions or comments later, I always try to respond to the comments anyway. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. I probably won't live stream over the weekend, but I will definitely record and tape. So thank you so much, and as always, happy creating.